Wasn't that a lovely way to open our morning? Thank you. Western Wayne County is proud to welcome you all to this sesquicentennial celebration of the first women's rights meeting in Indiana. Wayne County was one of the early counties in Indiana Territory, being established in 1810, which was 6 years before statehood was granted. The eastern side of our county, which includes Richmond, was open to settlement following the 1795 treaty at Greenville. There's a large monument that marks that treaty line over by the entrance to Kmart on the National Road between Centerville and Richmond. Then next, in 1809, the 12-mile purchase is marked with on the boundary at the west line of Cambridge City. So there's a big boulder on the north side of US 40 at the railroad track, which marks the 1809 purchase treaty line. Dublin, here in western Wayne County, is in that large area in the central part of Indiana that was open to settlement after statehood with the new purchase agreement of 1818. So Wayne County is the only county in the state that was affected by 3 purchase agreements with the Native Americans. Quakers coming mostly from North Carolina settled in Wayne County and founded Earlham College in 1847. Wayne County is also the home of Quaker Levi Coffin of Underground Railroad fame. Even today, we have 9 Quaker meetings and more than 700 Quakers in Wayne County. This is a map that shows the locations of all the Quaker meetings in Wayne County and all the Quaker buildings in Wayne County. How many of you are Quakers? That's pretty representative. Thank you very much. Now in your packet this morning, you received a map. And if you'll get that out, every group should have a map. We'll point out some places to you that you can visit today. Dublin was founded in 1830 and has a number of early buildings which line the National Road. And it may have been chosen for the first women's rights meeting because it was on the National Road, which provided access. It was also near the Whitewater Canal. And it was a central location. At that time, in the 1850s, the population of Indianapolis was just a little over 8,000 people. It's reported that the first convention was in the United Brethren Church, which is 2 blocks east of here, and you'll find it on your map with a red UB above it. Today, that is a white brick storage building, but you might like to drive by and have a look at where the first convention probably was held. We haven't documented that. Then the next town east is Mount Auburn, where the Huddleston Farmhouse Inn is located on the south side of the National Road. And this is the Eastern Regional Office for Historic Landmarks. So you're welcome to visit there today. Last month, Cambridge City was named the most historic small town in Indiana. And the Richmond paper carried this feature article about Cambridge City. The reason it was chosen is because it was located on the Old National Road, it was located on the Whitewater Canal, and it was a transportation center. There's a large brick Benton House Hotel, which is on your map, that was built in 1847, and that served both people who traveled on the canal and the National Road. It's being preserved now, so you can see it today. And there are many Federal and Greek Revival structures in Cambridge City's historic district. Probably our most famous person was Civil War General Solomon Meredith, and another claim to fame is our racehorse, Single G, who established speed records. Famous Overbeck pottery was made here starting in 1911, and it can be admired today in the museum and the public library. And the home of the Overbeck sisters is open today in East Cambridge. So this afternoon, you're invited to visit these 3 of our many historic places in western Wayne County. And Wayne County Tourism has provided 100 welcome packets, which are in a box out here on the table in the vestibule. And those packets include this colorful booklet, which has Richmond, has Richmond at the top, but that's a picture of Centerville on the cover. And it's full of information and historic facts, places to visit, and things to do. So we hope you'll pick up a packet out there as you leave today. And we invite you to come often to visit Wayne County. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, and welcome to this. Good morning. Now I know how my pastor at church always feels when you say good morning and no one answers out there, and he sometimes has to say it again. Especially the children's message, they're a little shy sometimes. Good morning and welcome to the sesquicentennial celebration of Indiana's first women's rights meeting. My name is Elizabeth Osborne, and I'm a member of the Indiana Women's History Association and of the committee that organized the celebration. We thought you might be a little bit interested in how this event came to take place. Well, in March of this year, I was invited to attend the association's annual conference and be on a panel, and at the end of that event, they held a roundtable discussion, just asking people what might be some possible future activities that the association could do. Well, in the course of my personal research on Indiana history and Indiana women's legal history, I ran across some references to this first meeting held here in Dublin in 1851 of a women's rights group. Well, I also had found information about the Richmond meeting that was held in 1852, and then every subsequent year until the Civil War, the women of Indiana organized and met in these women's rights meetings. Since it was already March of 2001, I thought it would probably be impossible to organize a celebration for the sesquicentennial of the first meeting, but I ventured that maybe we could organize something to be done in 2002, because that would be the sesquicentennial of the 1852 meeting, where the organization formally convened itself by drawing up a constitution and thus becoming the nation's first statewide permanent women's rights association. Well, little did I know what would happen, as our fearless chairperson has told me when you say, wouldn't it be a good idea if? Because a few months later, not even a few months later, I got a phone call asking me if I would like to participate on a committee to organize a celebration. Not of the 1852 event, but of the 1851 event. And here we all are here today. But how did Indiana men and women come together 150 years ago for this event? Well, it all started when Amanda Way, a young Quaker woman who was only about 22 years of age at the time, stood up at an anti-slavery meeting that was being held in Greensboro over in Henry County and entered a resolution calling for a women's rights meeting. But what prompted her to take that action? Remember, Seneca Falls had only happened in 1848. This is Indiana, 1851. Well, in October of 1850, and running through February of 1851, Indiana was in the midst of a constitutional convention. They were revising their constitution. And in the very first days of that constitutional convention, Robert Dale Owen had served notice that he was going to introduce a married woman's property rights provision to be included in the new constitution. Owen, I'm sure many of you have heard his name in association with New Harmony, was a nationally recognized reformer, and he had served in both the Indiana Congress and the National Congress in the 1830s and 40s. And while he had been a member of the Indiana legislature, he had been very active in efforts to expand and preserve Indiana's women's legal rights. For example, he had been instrumental in adding habitual drunkenness to the causes a woman could sue for divorce in Indiana, one of the very few states that allowed habitual drunkenness as a cause for divorce. Well, at the convention, his married women's property revision engendered considerable, acrimonious, and lengthy debate. The delegates literally spent days and days and days on this topic. While the change in the law was significant, it wasn't monumental. but it was the social implications of these provisions that rocked many of these men to the very soles of their feet. You would not believe some of the things that came out of those men's mouths. And it's all documented. If you read the proceedings, it's in print, so they can't say they didn't say it. For example, some of these men were afraid that if women got control of their own property, it might destroy the sanctity of the Christian marriage. It might make them less feminine. They might even enter the business arena and, heaven forbid, compete with their husbands. Oh no. One even went so far as to say the only women who would be interested in these provisions were ones who already wore the breeches at home. That's what he said. After days of debate, surprisingly enough, the provision passed. It was entered onto the table to be entered into the document. A group of Indianapolis women, led by the poetess Sarah T. Bolton, placed ads in papers throughout Indiana asking the women of Indiana to send donations for a gift that would commemorate Robert Dale Owen's efforts on their behalf. Well, the day after this ad appeared in the Indianapolis newspaper, those Constitutional Convention delegates called for a reconsideration of the provision. And after a whole nother round of lengthy and hostile debate over the topic, the provision was struck from the Constitution. In January, at the same time that Amanda Way out here in Dublin was calling for a women's rights meeting, Robert Dale Owen was frantically trying to get the provision back into the Constitution. He tried several different variations, watering it down a little bit every time, but he was unsuccessful. When the convention adjourned in February of 1851, there was no provision in the new Constitution to protect or extend the rights of Indiana's women. But Amanda Way and dozens of other Indiana men and women were not willing to let the matter drop. So when the women's rights meeting convened in October here in Dublin, Amanda Way was named its vice president, and she gave one of the keynote addresses. Another was given by the nationally prominent abolitionist speaker Henry C. Wright. He had given a similar address to the Women's Rights Convention that had been held in Salem, Ohio, the previous year. Way and Wright were joined on the platform by Henry and Hannah Wright, the president and her secretary, respectively, of the convention. So let's join them now and hear what they have to say.
Good afternoon and welcome to our gallant supporters and our esteemed opponents. Thank you all for heeding our call to attend this convention and to discuss and act upon the rights of women. A number of us have already gathered this morning to put together an agenda for our gathering and to elect officers for advancing the forum we devise here today. I, Hannah Hyatt, have the honor of serving as your president. Your vice president is Amanda M. Way, and your secretary is Henry Hyatt. We have monumental tasks ahead of us, and several representatives of both sides of this issue that wish to be heard, so let us begin. Before we move on to the tasks at hand, I have asked our newly elected vice president to give the opening address. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Amanda M. Way.
Thank you, President Hyatt. Esteemed colleagues and worthy opponents, I suppose you are all acquainted with the object of this meeting and have each and every one come with a determination to aid in the great work of elevating and bettering the condition of humanity. For while we are for women's rights, we are only enlisted in the mighty enterprise of elevating and the whole human family to their proper position. For surely, the condition of the wife, the mother, and the sister should concern the husband, the father, and the brother. And concern them, I can assure you it will affect them. For have they not the same origins and destination? Are their relations and obligations mutual? And whatever degrades or ennobles one has the same effect on the other. Compare the downtrodden slaves of the South to the free and enlightened men of the North. In one case, they are debased by the chains they wear. In the other, they are excited and ennobled by the freedom they enjoy. Is it not the same with those previously mentioned mothers, daughters, and sisters? Are we not now debased by the social, financial, and political chains we wear? No. Would we not be ennobled and energized if the chains were removed so that we could enjoy the freedoms that our husbands, sons, and fathers and brothers enjoy? I assure you that we would. Now, the chains that hold a woman powerless produce the same effect that the chains of slavery produce. Would not the knowledge of her independence make woman a happier being? Yes. Would it not ennoble her to more fully discharge her duty in every department of life? Would not her individuality give her a deeper sense of her self-worth? Let us then be diligent, energetic, and decisive in our proceedings here today and in the future. Let us not ask for our rights as a gracious boon to be granted by all-powerful man, but let us demand them as an inherent part of our being. Silence and blind obedience have ceased to be the mark of a virtuous woman. All customs, laws, and institutions which deprive women of an equal right with men to intellectual, social, and moral improvement, to the attainment of wealth, personal comfort, and independence, or to an equal share in administering the social, civil, and religious institutions under which they are to live, and to which they are held responsible, are unjust, cruel, and oppressive, and ruinous to the peace, order, and progress of individuals and the human family, and all men and women who respect themselves and their fellow beings will plead and labor for their change or overthrow. Demand our rights, politically, socially, and financially. We will continue in the future, as we have in the past, defined as slaves, as criminals, the insane, idiots, and infants, rendered incapable of action which every man here accepts without question as his birthright. I urge you then to look upon your sisters, your mothers, and daughters as full participants in American democracy. And I further urge you to support the resolutions which we adopt here today with actions and words in your own lives on a daily basis that manifest your support for the rights of women. I thank you.
No, let us thank you, Miss Way, for your words of wisdom and encouragement. I hereby call this convention to order. And the floor is open for the introduction of this assembly to the discussion of women's rights. Mr. Hyatt, will you read the minutes of the first resolution for us, and others will be read by the committee members. And then we will call for discussion alternately pro and con from the delegates. As a rule of order, will all delegates please stand and address the assembly? The president will not harbor any rabble-rousing, nor any threats to any member of this assembly. We are here for a free and open exchange of ideas. Now, Mr. Hyatt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. When we met this morning, we undertook a great deal of discussion and debate. I present the following for your consideration. Whereas the subject of women's rights is founded upon the eternal rock of truth, and as unceasing and untiring activity is absolutely necessary for the promulgation of information regarding a woman's condition, needs, and claims, and as united action and committed organization further the cause most efficiently, we present the following resolutions for your consideration.
Madam President, I move that all persons present be requested to participate in the proceedings of this meeting.
I second the motion, Madam President.
It has been so moved and seconded. Without any discussion, I will put this resolution to a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion that all persons be requested to participate in the proceedings of this meeting, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Next motion, please.
Madam President, I, Agnes Cook, move that the rights of suffrage be extended to women.
Is there a second?
Second.
The floor is now open for the resolution of extending the right of suffrage to women. I wish to remind you that every person who wishes to speak should be allowed to do so without fear of impunity or interruption. We now will open the floor for debate, beginning with a speech in favor of the resolution.
Madam President,
The chair recognizes Dr. O.P. Baer. Henry Hyatt will be reading Dr. Baer's resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, no longer can we stand idly while our wives, daughters, and sisters are denied the rights guaranteed to us in the Constitution of the United States of America.
Hear, hear.
It is my sincere wish that my wife be granted the right to my property and finances if I should die before her. There is no one on earth who knows my wishes for her and my daughter as well as she does. Why then must she be denied the right to administer my lands, holdings, and monies as she sees fit? Why must an officer of the court be appointed to administer my bequests to her, or God forbid to my daughter if both my wife and I should meet untimely death? Furthermore, I'm speaking for my daughter here. Why has she been denied the right to attend high school and college that her male counterparts have? My daughter has a brilliant mind which outshines most of her peers, be they male or female, and yet merely she can complete the 8th grade simply because she is not a young man. I urge the Assembly to pass this resolution extending suffrage to women and begin the serious work of obtaining equal rights for our wives and daughters. Thank you.
Dr. Baer could not attend, but he sent his words, and I thank you, Henry, for reading them to us. Now the chair will entertain comments opposing the resolution. The chair recognizes Dr. Curtis.
Thank you, Madam. I stand before you today shocked and amazed at this turn of events. My acquaintance, Dr. Baer, speaks lovingly of his wife and daughter and asks for their rights to control what he chooses to bequeath to them in their hour of deepest need. We are all aware of the delicate, emotional constitution of women. My adoring wife is a prime example. Who could say what might happen to the doctor's request if left in the hands of women who have little knowledge of the workings of the legal and financial systems of the world.
Work better. That's right.
I say our system is working well to protect these delicate creatures, and nothing should be done to tamper with, especially politics, exposing them to the rough and humble antics of politicians and the elective process.
Dr. Beach.
Yes, well said, Curtis. I am in full agreement and urge that you all follow our lead and vote against this horrendous motion and go home to your husbands and children where you should be.
You are out of order, Dr. Beach. Thank you, Dr. Curtis. The floor is now open for those in support of the resolution. The chair recognizes Eliza Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I stand before you to speak in support of extending suffrage to women, but I encourage both Dr. Curtis and Reverend Nixon and Dr. Beach to recognize that most households are financially managed by women.
Not mine.
Those households that are managed to succeed, indeed thrive, due to the ingenuity of women who have attempted to stretch the almighty dollar to its breaking point, and feed, clothe, and maintain the health of every member of the family.
Yes.
I would like to urge you to add the following concern to the resolution. Whereas we believe the present style of female dress is highly inconvenient, unnatural, and destructive to health, and mark the degradation of women. Therefore, be it resolved that the women of this convention pledge themselves before our families to throw off the bondage imposed upon us by Parisian milliners and adopt a style of dress more in accordance with reason. We're only to look around us and to note the number of times that we've been present at gatherings such as this one, and count the dozens of women who have fainted due to the ominous weight of their clothing and the unnatural restrictions placed upon their anatomies made by the styles of our times. I urge you to add this concern to the resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. I will now entertain opposition sentiment. The chair recognizes Mrs. Harold Smith.
Well, I'm Mrs. Smith, and I'm really unaccustomed to speaking before so many people. Please excuse me. I feel I must be the voice of reason, however. I am here before you and God to protest the passage of this woman's suffrage resolution. I am one who is thoroughly satisfied with my position in American society. I am pleased to be a wife and mother, a holy trust granted by God. I desire no common everyday traffic in commerce, politics, or finance. I am content to serve my husband.
resolution.
Madam President,
The chair recognizes Ms. Geneva Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam President. I, like the majority of those attending this gathering, support women's suffrage and condemn the exclusion of women from high schools and colleges.
No.
I support and encourage coeducation and urge equal compensation for both men and women in whichever endeavor they choose to take. I'm appalled by the suggestion that women are delicate creatures who need to be looked after like dumb animals.
Yes.
Like Taylor, I too chafe under the yoke of clothing which restricts my movements and at times even my very breath. The issue which I wish to discuss more fully in this convention is the lack of representation by women in every arena which governs them. As wives and mothers, we are to always demur to our husbands' choices and decisions regarding us and our children. We have no legal right to own property. We cannot represent ourselves in any court of law, nor can we attempt to gain a training which would enable us to become either a lawyer or doctor of medicine. Few professions are open to us, and most of us are not allowed to venture forth in public without a male escort for fear of losing our reputation as decent, law-abiding citizens. We ask for a chance freely given to every man here to use our voices and our votes, whether it be in the political forum, the meeting house, the workplace, the home, or the courthouse, to give us our rightful representation in a society that looks upon us now as the lowest caste of beings. I urge each and every one of you to pass this resolution.
Yes.
Once again, I must ask you to refrain from interrupting each speaker. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. The chair now entertains commentary from those opposed to the resolutions. The chair recognizes the Reverend Mr. Nixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I stand in this house of God. You know me. I've been a pastor in this community for nearly a decade. And as a man of God, it's my duty to speak against this resolution. I've been a student of the Bible and of Christian doctrine for a quarter of a century. I'm also proud to be called an American. It's from the rock of the Word of God that I speak to you today. It's on the Constitution of the United States that I stand when I say that women already have all the rights which the Bible designed for them to have in this Christian community. Read it! If God intended for women to have any more rights than they currently have, He would have ordained it so in His holy book of laws and morality. Can you imagine a flock of Christians following a female as their moral leader? Everybody here knows that the first sin was committed by a woman. Eve led Adam to sin with her, and our Holy Father drove them out of Eden.
And why did you follow?
The majority of us are satisfied with our own Eden here in America. Why should we take the risk of being driven out of this Eden that so many of our ancestors have fought and died to maintain? I urge you as Christians and as Americans to vote against this resolution. Only evil will come if women, the daughters of Eve, are allowed to vote.
Order, please. Thank you, Reverend Nixon. As it is now time to entertain a speech in favor of the resolution, I call upon our guest, the famous anti-slavery lecturer and woman's right advocate, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Henry C. Wright.
Thank you, Madam President. My regards to all who have spoken here today, many of whom have addressed the same issues both for and against the topic of women's suffrage that have been raised across many states in our sovereign union. I was pleased to hear Ms. Way speak of the family of man in her speech. The family has left a majority of its members to assume a position different from what was intended for them. A position which was entitled to them by the laws of nature and of God. A position of decency and respect, which gives them a voice in all arenas of the society to which they belong. A position every decent family grants to every member of that family. The right to be heard in matters that bear upon that member's destiny and well-being. Perhaps our Constitution should be rewritten or rephrased. Perhaps it should sound something like this. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure those rights, governments are instituted deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of those who suffer to refuse allegiance to it, and to insist upon the institution of a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall most likely to affect their safety and happiness. We have heard today and in the past of a long train of abuses and usurpations which women and others have suffered due to men who subject them to the whims of their absolute despotism. It has now become our duty to throw off this yoke of despotism and abuse, and for us to demand for every member of the family of man the equal station to which they are entitled. Let us recall the repeated injuries that man has foisted on woman in his absolute tyranny over her. He has never permitted her to exercise her inalienable right to elective franchise. Our mothers, sisters, and daughters do not have the right to vote. He has compelled her to submit to the laws in the formation of which she has had no voice. He has withheld from her rights which are given to the most ignorant and degraded of men, both natives and foreigners. Having deprived her of the right to vote, he has deprived her of any representation in any legal assembly, thereby oppressing her on all sides. If she is married, in the eyes of the law, she is legally dead. He has taken from her the right of property ownership, even of the wages she earns. He has made her morally an irresponsible being, as she can commit many crimes with impunity, provided they be done in the presence of her husband. In marriage, she is compelled to promise obedience to her husband, making him, for all intents and purposes, her master. The law has given him the power to deprive her of her liberty and administer chastisement as he sees fit. He has so framed the laws of divorce to be wholly regardless to the rights of women and happiness of women. The law in all cases, whether it be to the cause of the separation or to the guardianship of the children, is based on the false supposition of the supremacy of man and has given all the power into his hands. And after all this, he has taxed her to support a government which recognizes her only when her property can be made profitable to it. Man has monopolized nearly all of the profitable employment and excluded her from any which she can make a decent working wage. He closes any avenues for wealth and distinction which he considers most honorable to himself. No woman is known as a teacher of medicine, law, or theology. He denies her the facilities for obtaining a thorough education, all colleges and most high schools being closed against her entrance. She is allowed in church and state in a subordinate position only. He has created a different code of morals for both men and women, by which moral delinquencies which exclude women from society are not only tolerated, but deemed of little account in man. Man has usurped the role of God himself by claiming it his right to assign for her a sphere of action when that right belongs to a woman's conscience and to God. He has endeavored in every way he knows to destroy a woman's confidence in her own faculties, to lessen her self-respect and thereby make her willing to live a dependent and abject life. Now, in view of this disenfranchisement of more than half of the people in this country, their social and religious degradation, in view of the unjust laws aforementioned, and because women themselves feel aggrieved, oppressed, and fraudulently deprived of their most sacred rights, we insist that by signing this resolution, that women have immediate admission to all the rights and privileges which belong to them as citizens of the United States of America and of the family of man. As we enter upon this great enterprise, we anticipate no small amount of misconception, misrepresentation, and ridicule, but we shall use every instrument within our power to effect our resolution. I urge you not only to vote for this resolution and to abide by the actions it prescribes, but also to further the cause by encouraging those in other settlements and towns to do likewise. It is time we give woman such a station in society as her conscience shall dictate, to make her man's equal and to ensure those rights for all of our daughters, mothers, wives, and sisters. I thank you.
Madam President,
Oh, yes. The chair recognizes Mrs. Cook.
I see that this resolution for women's suffrage might need to be further discussed at a later date. I'm aware that there are other matters which need to be brought to our attention today.
Thank you, Mrs. Cook. And thank you, Mr. Wright. I hereby invoke my privilege to remove this motion from discussion
Yes.
until further notice. The chair will now entertain further resolutions for our consideration.
Madam President,
Yes.
Madam President, I move we consider that it is a self-evident truth that all human beings are created equal, and whatever natural right belongs to one individual human being belongs to us all.
I second the motion.
Is there another motion?
Madam President,
Yes.
I move that we consider the following, that men and women are equally dependent for happiness each upon the other, that all precepts, usages, laws, or institutions that tend to the unequal subjection of either in the other are outrageous upon human nature and destructive of the harmony of society and ought to be changed or abolished.
Is there another motion?
I move that we consider that all customs, laws, and institutions that deprive women of an equal right with men to intellectual, social, and moral improvement, to the attainment of wealth and personal comfort and independence, or to an equal share in creating and administering the social, civil, and religious institutions under which they are to live and to which they are to be held responsible, are unjust, cruel, and oppressive, and ruinous to the peace, order, and progress of the whole human family. And all men and women who respect themselves and their fellow beings will plead and labor for their change or their overthrow.
Madam President, I move that the previous three resolutions just introduced be our topics for reflection and discussion until our next meeting, and that we also contemplate further resolutions that might enhance the cause of women's suffrage.
Thank you for your resolutions. It is now time for a vote to take the previous motions under consideration until our next meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Nay. The ayes have it. These resolutions are officially under consideration by this assemblage until our next meeting. It is also time to take what we have discussed here home to our families and communities for further discussion and action. I urge you not to forget the nobility of our endeavors and the admonitions to stay our course, as Miss Way and Mr. Wright have so aptly said. Please take what you have agreed with to heart and further refine it. Please take with you what you have disagreed with here today and further discuss it until you are sure it remains disagreeable.
Madam President, I move that we meet here 1 year from today to report on our progress and to discuss further resolutions.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second the motion.
I amend to suggest that our meeting place be Richmond. I also suggest for a vote of thanks to the citizens of Dublin for their hospitality and to the trustees for their use of this church. I would also like a vote of thanks to the committee which drafted the resolution and to Mr. Henry C. Wright and Amanda M. Way for their eloquent speeches.
I move for adjournment.
Second.
So moved. The first meeting of the Indiana Women's Right Convention is adjourned. Hello. I'm not really Mrs. Smith. I just play her. I am Jill Chambers, co-chair of this marvelous event. I am so glad that lots of you came out to participate today. And these hats are just wonderful. I want to first introduce all of our wonderful actors. And what I want them to do is to step up and say what role you played and who you really are. And I think that I will start with Madam President. Well, my name is Dorothy Young, and I'm an art teacher in Indianapolis Public Schools, and I played Hannah Scott, the chairman.
I'm Gary Williams, and I played Amanda Way, and I also wrote the script.
My name is Will Reyes, and I played Henry Hyatt, but I also played Dr. Bear, and also played Joel Davis. And I'm a Spanish teacher at Indianapolis Public Schools.
I'm Barry Chambers. I'm Jill's husband. I'm an attorney, and I played Reverend Nixon.
My name is John Joyner. I played Henry C. Wright, the famous speaker.
I'm Jerry McClass. I played Dr. Beach. I'm opposed to this. I feel like someday the men will be liberated.
Come up here and introduce themselves. And some of you are waiting in the back, so start making your way forward in those lovely skirts. I'm Dora Bradway, and I played Geneva Kennedy, and I'm actually an attorney.
I'm Susan Miller. I played Eliza Taylor, and I'm actually a grant writer for Gleaners Food Bank.
I am Diane Nevitt. I played Agnes Cook, and I'm Museum Director for the Hamilton County Historical Society.
My name's Emily Young, and I played Fanny Hyatt and Lydia Davis, and I'm an artist. Aren't we a great-looking group? Oh, yes, and we forgot, because he's not in costume, but would you please come up and say who you are?
Yeah, my name is Tim McClure, and I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm from Carmel, and my delicate wife happens to be Governor O'Bannon's press secretary.
All right, next I want to have the committee who helped organize this stand up and be recognized. Elizabeth Osborne. Phyllis Mathias, who was our person in the area. Where is Beth? Beth. Oh, she's over here. And this is Beth Van Vorst, my co-chair, who is primarily responsible for this lovely booklet that you all have received. Let me see, there are other people on our committee. Oh, Annette, where's Annette? Oh, there she is, she's in the back. And Pam Johnson, please stand, Pam. Pam was our researcher. She is my co-worker at the Division of Mental Health, and I kind of dragged her into all of this, so she really deserves the thanks. I also want to thank the Women's Association, officers and board. If you are an officer or board member, please stand and be recognized. I see some people. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming out and doing this. Now, the actual event was held in 1851, as you know, and the people who really did this were younger people. They were in their 20s and 30s. So you really had to stretch your imagination with us. I mean, they were the rebel rousers. So, but I wanted to let you know that Amanda Wade was just 22 and 23 when all of this happened. And she went on to do incredible things, primarily in the area of temperance. She was one of the people responsible for Kansas's prohibition amendment to their constitution, and she ran on the Prohibition Party for Congress in Idaho in 1900. The woman became a Quaker minister, and was a Quaker minister when she died at the age of 86 in Whittier, California in 1914. So she had a long and very active life. And most people don't know who she is, but now you all do. There are Amanda Wade buttons that will be sold, and additional booklets if you would like. The booklets will be $2 if you want extra copies, and the buttons will be $1 or $2 as a, whatever kind of donation you would like to give for them. They're Amanda Wade buttons. And also, we're going to do a little thing that most of the churches did. We're going to pass the hat. So, gentlemen, do you have your hats?